Welcome to Her Time to Talk. I'm Megan Clark, a licensed professional counselor and the founder of Her Time Therapy, a group practice dedicated to supporting women's mental health. This podcast is for women, by women, and is all about creating a safe place for our experiences, amplifying our voices, and empowering each other with the knowledge to improve our mental health. Today, I'm here with Sydney, who is the producer for the Her Time to Talk podcast, and a very special guest that I'm honored and excited to speak with. Today's guest has a long and powerful rap sheet of accolades, accomplishments, and leadership roles spanning over 5 decades in both the LGBTQIA+ advocacy space and corporate DEI world. Angelique Piwinski is a trans elder, an educator, and a nationally recognized speaker whose work has left a lasting mark across industries and communities. A New York native, Angie retired as Senior Diversity and Inclusion Program Specialist from Interpublic Group, a global communications company with over 90 agencies and nearly 60,000 employees. She holds the distinction of being the most senior employee in IPG's history to transition to female, and she did so while serving as the Executive VP across multiple global firms in the advertising world. Beyond corporate leadership, Angie served on the LGBTQIA+ advisory board to the mayor of Yonkers, New York's third largest city, where she played a key role in securing a perfect equality score from the Human Rights Campaign year after year. She was a World Pride Ambassador for New York State, a recipient of the Michael Sabino Legacy Award, and was recently honored in a citywide proclamation declaring Angelique Piwinski Day during Pride in 2024. She's also a community historian, an ordained Episcopal church leader, a documentary narrator, and a public educator whose work spans from city halls to museum galleries. And most remarkably, she stood at the Stonewall Uprising in 1969, witnessing firsthand a moment that would ignite a global movement. We are beyond honored and welcome Angelique to the show during what we know is an incredibly busy and emotionally charged Pride Month. Her voice carries the weight of history and the clarity of lived truth, and we're so grateful that she's here to talk with us today. Her voice carries the weight of history and the clarity of lived truth, and we're so grateful she's here with us today. So Angie, thank you so much for being here. How are you feeling coming into today's conversation?
Oh, I'm feeling great. This is something I enjoy doing, and I think it's important for a lot of people to hear. And those who don't want to hear it, don't listen. Simple as that.
Simple as that. I couldn't agree more. So we are very intentionally recording this during Pride Month of 2025, and we're really curious to hear from you. What does Pride Month mean to you now at this stage in your life and your advocacy, especially given everything that's happening today politically and culturally?
That's a really interesting question because I look back on the origins of Pride, and originally, back in the year after Stonewall, they did a march in New York City, and they were trying to figure out what to name it. How do you wrap this? So it was a celebration of this, but on the other hand, so one of the people said maybe it's gay power. The word power was big in the 70s as Black power, gay power, flower power. We had all that stuff. But one of the organizers said, we don't have any power, but we have pride in who we are as people. And everyone, no matter who they are, can have pride in something. It's not something that, it's something you've accomplished, and it doesn't have to be this, it could be something else. So I'm always feeling good that we still continue to acknowledge and celebrate pride, if you will. And it's changing all the time. We're in a difficult period right now where, not that we weren't in the 60s, because they were violent and difficult. And so we've come full circle, not quite as bad as it was back then, but we're there and we're getting there. And of course, to me, this is simply a distraction from all the other stuff that Washington seems to want to do. I frame it that way. There's 2 million of us trans people out there. Latest polling, Gallup just did a poll that talked about 9.3% of the US population is LGBTQ plus. That is a lot of people. Figuring 330 million people roughly in this country, that's a lot of people. It would be the second largest state if we were all living together. So that's a lot. And the other piece that's really good, comforting to me as I see history evolving, is in that same study, they looked at different age cohorts. And my generation, the baby boomers, the numbers were like 2.2%, 2.3%, because a lot of us unfortunately aren't with us anymore, and some are having more difficulty. But Generation Z, those who are just in that beginning adulthood stage, 23 point something percent identified as LGBTQ. What that tells me is the future is going to be really good, because all these old people who, and I'm not including myself in that yet, who are predisposed to throw us all under the bus because you're weird, you're crazy, or whatever, your mental illness, blah, blah. They'll all be gone. And the youngest generation will be taking over. And so anybody who is in any kind of leadership position should recognize that this is a temporary thing, in my opinion. It's not as bad as it was in the 60s. It could get there, but so far it's not there yet. So I tend to be a little more optimistic than most.
I think that's what we need right now, certainly, is a voice of optimism and some perspective in the history of it all. And I think that data that you shared here of if we put all this, population together, we'd be the second largest state. I think that's a very significant point of data to put imagery together that really shows we're not going anywhere. This is not a community that can be squashed. This is a community that has always been here and will always be here. And we're in a certain iteration of the fight, so to speak. But yeah, that's a very powerful imagery you gave us.
I honestly do think that, again, I'm basically, because of the industry that I was part of, data was important. I always looked at data. And when I see a positive trend, it's telling me the future is going to be good. I won't be around, but for those in Generation Z who will become my age, the world will be very different, and different in a hopefully good way.
Yeah. What would you say from your perspective are some of the things that need to happen to continue to create that positive future that the data is forecasting here?
Stories, telling our stories, being out there, being visible, but not visible. I was never one of those, let me hold up the banners and all that stuff. I was just out there doing something good for the greater community, not necessarily the LGBTQ plus community, but just being a part of the community. And I was on many different boards, not having to do with LGBTQ. I was on the Landmarks Preservation Board for the city of Yonkers for 10 years. We made a lot of progress, landmarking properties, spreading the love of history. I actually have a Facebook group dedicated to local history. I have 15,000 people in the group. I'm the only admin. So the idea is, even some of the boards I was on, when I was in that process of doing this transition, my board members, I was president of one of them, and I said to the vice president, I said, I'm going to be doing this transitional thing now. And she said to me, you know what? If anyone on this board has a problem with that, then they should resign. Because what you contribute is most important. It's not who you are, which I found that to be true. It's, oh, by the way, I happen to be transgender. So what? But I'm also a congressionally recognized historian. I'm also still part of board of trustees of a pretty prominent museum in New York. And so it's those kind of things that have nothing to do with, oh, by the way. And then you tell your story. And then the story helps others to, gee, if you succeeded that way, then maybe I can take some of those best practices, some of that case history that you're giving us, and put that together with other people and create my own path forward. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's actually really a comforting thing to hear in a way, because a lot of I know therapists at her time and a lot of our clients are coming to us in sessions saying, I'm so upset about what I'm seeing happen in the world right now. And I'm just drowning in it. I don't know what my form of advocacy could be because there's just too many things that I could and I feel like I should be doing. And we try to look at it from the lens of we can't all be doing everything all the time, and you have to pick your form of advocacy. And to hear you describe you were just in it, you just lived your authentic life. I think is what people are needing to hear right now too, is that they can just go forward and live their life, and they don't have to necessarily be elected into a position in government or be on the streets protesting every day. You know, that you can do those things if that's your form, but it doesn't have to be that. There's a lot of ways to be in the advocacy space when things are happening that are disruptive in the world.
Authenticity, just being your authentic self, is an act of resilience.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. I don't post negative stuff on any of social media because people just get turned right off. They don't want to hear that. And I don't blame them. There's enough negativity out there. What I try to do is pick the good stuff, the stuff that's positive, elevate that. Even a running chronology in my own life, I have a 2-year-old grandson, and it's a lot of fun when I get to see him and all that stuff. It's celebrating the life you have and the friends you have and the potential friends that you might have and the good things. There's always going to be bad things. So I tend to shy away from that.
Yeah, that's such a good message to really lean into celebrating the good parts of life rather than letting those bad parts capsize you. I can see that optimism in you.
It's just the way I am. And there's a lot I could be negative about, but I'm not going to go that route because to me, happiness is self-created. Happiness is the fountain of youth. I just turned 70. I don't really look 70, and people don't perceive me as 70. I'm always say, how old do you think I am? And don't answer the question. But stuff like that. You've got to be positive even if the environment is negative. And that's the way you spread smiles and happiness.
Yeah. Thank you for that perspective. It's so needed to hear that right now. And you mentioned, in addition to this, one of your big forms of advocacy is storytelling and being willing to share your narrative with others as a way to enhance and uplift them. So I'm hoping we can maybe go kind of back to the beginning because you have lived through so many cultural chapters of queer history. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what shaped your early sense of self and identity.
Sure. It goes way back with me. I think it was around the age of 4.5, something like that. I came to the realization that I was different because I didn't like to do the things that little boys did. I didn't like to get dirty and I didn't like to play in the mud and trucks and stuff. Even though I did it, it wasn't enjoyable. But what I used to do, this is crazy, but growing up in Brooklyn in a 2-family house, my grandparents were downstairs and they didn't go anywhere. They were retired. And so my mom would go to the store and just tell him, oh, he's upstairs, whatever. And I would go into my mother's closet, and she was little, and so was I. My mother was 5 foot, whatever, 100 pounds. And I would put on her dress or her shoes and look at she had this full length mirror on the back of the closet door. And I would wear the stuff, and I'm like, and it made me feel really good. And there's no fetish, there's no fantasy, there's no hormones, there's nothing going. It's just your brain is telling you you feel good with this exterior. And that was the beginning of many years of feeling that and understanding more, because I was for it in 1959. The word trans didn't even exist. We did, but it didn't exist. And there were a few examples of people who did a sex change, but it was mostly looked down upon and made fun of. And I also know that if I ever told my father, who was a World War II Army combat veteran, that, Dad, I think I'm a girl, he would have, we need to get you a doctor. So I never did. I just kept it inside, thinking I was weird. And I went through so many years of that, but it gets stronger and stronger. As a teenager, Halloween was my favorite day because I could be Dolly Parton, iteration of Dolly Parton. And it sounds weird and it sounds crazy, but the way I look at this stuff now is that I have a female brain. I may not have all the body parts, but the brain is encased in your body. And if you detach your spirit from the body, which hopefully happens when you're dead, there's no body part to connect with. It's simply who you think you are. And I think about that a lot too. What defines a female? Some would say, yeah, you need to be able to bear a child. What happens after menopause? Do you stop being a female? What happens if you're born sterile? Are you not a female? And then what about intersex people who have pieces and parts of both organs, who may have XX chromosomes in certain organs and XY in another set of organs? What about them? 1 in 1,600 births was the last statistic I saw. That's a lot of people. And so the notion that we just have male and female is not really correct. We have binary, male, female, but we have our brains telling us who we are. Forget the body. Our brains are telling us something different. And mine kept telling me, you are not what you appear to be. And I'm not crazy. I don't have a mental disorder, as some would say. I'm simply me. And then I use another statistic where there's 8 billion people on this planet, and no two people are the same. There'll never be another you. There was never another you. That's an incredible miracle when you think about it. And so who's to say that I'm not who I think I am? It's like you're your own person and I'm my own person. I see it in some children too. People say, oh, you're indoctrinating kids. Baloney. The kids know who they are. I knew who I was. I just couldn't express it because there were no books to take out of a library. There was no internet. There were no role models. There was nothing. So I just thought it was weird. What do you do? So as you go through life, this was the challenge that I had. And I did the things that typically you would do. I went to college. I did get married. Couldn't have children, had biological children, adopted 2 children who are now adults and are dearest kids of mine. And so life takes you through of its own pathway. And you do the best you can with each pathway. And that leads you to another chapter and another chapter. So I'm in this later chapter, but you look back on it all and you say, yeah, would I have changed anything? No, because I wouldn't be who I was today if I had to change something. Because you change one dial, something else happens. There's a realization of who you are as a person. And it's difficult for people who don't live this to wrap their heads around it. Because I keep reading about mental disorders and all that stuff. No, it's not. It is who my brain and 2 million other brains out there saying who you are. And so that's my message to go through all the stages in life, but be who you are. That is the message. Don't fight it. Be who you are and the other thing is so important that if you, which I did for many years, repress who I was and worrying about who's going to find out that I'm really this or that, you're not living to your full potential because you're spending too much time worrying about other people. Forget the other people, just be yourself. And it will make such a difference in your life. The rock was lifted when I finally said, I'm done. I'm going to be me. And then you make whatever adjustments you want. Some people don't. I did. But they're minor in the sense of you can't change a body. You can change some aspects of biology, but your brain stays, your spirit, your soul is who you are. And that doesn't change. You can't fix that. You can't change it. You can't modify it. You can learn, but you'll always be who you are.
Just shared so many powerful things there. And I think one thing I want to highlight and echo here is this We see a lot of debate and a lot of argument about gender and gender identity versus sexuality, and looking at the biology of it versus the societal language of the gender spectrum. But I think you're taking this to a higher level by really separating it from the body entirely, because there's a lot of arguments scientifically that there is not just the gender binary, but the way that you're speaking of this as at a soul level of you live with you all of the time. Your soul potentially transcends even after our physical body is gone. And it's that deep level of awareness that you're speaking to here in terms of gender and really knowing yourself.
It's really a powerful thing, and it only comes after you think about it a lot. I also teach groups and companies who are trying to be more accepting of different people. And I think one of the things is that whole LGBTQIA plus acronym, they call it the letters suit. But those who want to like degrade stuff, like how many more letters you got? The reality is we have 8 billion people worth of letters. The key here is that when you break that acronym down, it really comes down to two things. It's who we are and who we love. That's it.
Mm.
It's so elementary, the who we are. Okay, then the who we love. It's so
That's
easy.
so powerful.
It's so easy. And yeah, and yes, there's a huge pyramid of that and all kinds of buckets, which I hate. It's a continuum. I don't care what anybody says. It is a total continuum of everything. But that's humanity.
I think a lot of people who maybe don't have anyone in the LGBTQ community in their lives that they know personally, they don't have the opportunity to really talk with and interact with anyone in that community. So they get lost in the letter soup, as you called it. And it's just very foreign, and foreign is sometimes scary. I'm curious in your own identity too, in the development over your childhood. You mentioned growing up not really having even the language to internally process this, let alone the ability to talk about it with others. As more language was developed around this, even the words transgender, how did that help empower you, or I guess push forward your identity?
The word, if you go back to history, the word transgender didn't really appear until the late 1960s. And I was already older at the time. It was expressed at the time as the drag queens. Even the word drag queen is a whole continuum of people. There are men who just enjoy theatrics. There are gay people who enjoy theatrics, which are mostly men, but some women like the term gay. And so you had this whole spectrum of women performing. And that was actually one of the things that was the ignition point for Stonewall, the uprising, because in New York City at the time, and I think it was New York State as well, if you wore more than 3 articles of clothing of the opposite sex from your ID, you could be arrested. And a lot of people were. And that's why Stonewall happened, because they kept arresting the drag queens. Up until 1966, if you were an openly gay person and the bartender in a bar knew you, they legally could not serve you a drink. And that was the law. So you sit there with all these repressive things going on. And the idea that the police at the time would actually try to draw out a gay person to arrest them in a bar, it was a horrible time, a lot of violence. So again, you have to live through the period to see it, to understand it. And then I hung out on Christopher Street. I loved Christopher Street at the time. It was so cool. And it was June, it was summer, school was out. And I used to hang around with a few friends, and it was late, really late at night, and we were just walking along and we stumbled on it. You didn't get an invitation to a riot. These are the things that I go back to because they're so important. So the whole notion of gender and all of that, it's a sense of self. I knew I was not a little boy. I didn't understand why, which is why I was expressing who I was, putting on my mom's clothes. And it wasn't a fetish. You can't have a fetish at 5 or 6. You just do because it makes you feel good. So as you move through it in life, that thing gets stronger and stronger. And then to the point where again, a long litany of when I would travel for business, I had 2 suitcases, one little one, the dude, and a giant one. Because God forbid we didn't know what we're going to wear. We don't, well, our mood is in shoes and dress and the way it works. It was hysterical. And I used to say to people, oh yeah, I'm heading out to the West Coast because I'm going to donate my clothing to some organization. No, it was both for me. But you do all you have to do. But I just encourage people to just be who you are. Don't hide it. Don't, because the more you hide it, the less productive you are and the unhappier that you are. And the minute you tell people, you come out to people, if that's the right word. I gave a speech, the first one actually, they had asked me to tell my story. It was to the 4As, the American Association of Advertising Agencies. They had a yearly luncheon for their multicultural program. It was like 600 people in their room. It was an in-person live thing. I think it was 2014 or 15. And they contacted me and they said, could you tell your story? You're going to be our inspirational speaker. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, why am I inspirational? Your story is really amazing. It is. I was like taken aback. Like, I didn't think that. At the end, my message was, it's never too late to be the real you. And I said, I just turned 60 at the time. And I'm still in the advertising business, which is really a young people's business. And at another event a month later, this young guy, a hearing person, came to me and you were the speaker, weren't you? I said, yeah. He said, you inspired me to come out to my friends and family. But because you said it's never too late. I'm 20 something year old. And so I said, so how was their reaction? They all said they already knew that he was gay. I'm like, okay. So what that means to me is that the message resonates. It inspires people to just be themselves. And this was a long time ago. And I got to believe that person is happier today than ever before. And a number of others, same kind of thing happened at different stages in my life. So yeah, be out there, tell your story, do the right thing. If you don't want to listen to it, don't listen.
Have you always had this confident sense of your authentic self? And was that challenging for you? What was that process like of gaining that knowledge and understanding and love for yourself, it sounds, so that you were able to spread that message?
You hit the key word there, confidence. It takes a lot to get the confidence. It's not an instant confident. Because I remember just the first time stepping out of a hotel room in San Francisco when I made the decision, I'm going to live me. I'm going to be me. I was scared to death because I was going to walk a few blocks with a cute dress and heels to a bar that I knew was friendly to people like me. And the neighborhood was, it's the Tenderloin in San Francisco. It's a little dicey neighborhood, but cool. It was a transgender epicenter, if you will. And I used to stay there when I was seeing my client. And they always used to say, why are you staying at this cheap flea bag hotel? We put you up in a nice place. No, I want to be here. I want to be with my people. Anyway, the confidence it takes to walk out of that hotel room. For the first bunch of times, I had an old flip phone. So I was pretending to talk to somebody as I'm walking so I wouldn't have to hear the, hey, baby, how this. And I know I didn't look that good in the beginning. But the idea of confidence is critical. And the only way you do it is to actually do it. Walk the walk. Get out there, do it. And over time, I was comfortable. It's okay, I can do this. It's working for me. And then you build up the confidence to start telling people. And you get rejected by some. Yeah, I remember telling a really good friend, and the person said, I can't have a friend like you. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm the same person. No, what would they say to me? I'm like, who cares about you? It's about me. And it was, no, I can't have a friend like you. And that was it. Okay, fine. I tried a few times, give up. At the end of the day, you're going to lose some, but you gain a lot more. And that was another piece of confidence, because I was confident enough to say, all right, this is who I am. If you don't like me, bye. If you do like me, we can be friends or acquaintances or just business, whatever. So I look at those kind of things and say, you need to develop confidence. It takes a while. It really does take time. However, once you get there, there's no turning back because you've already gotten past it. You're unstoppable. That's it. And yeah, no journey is ever complete without somebody assaulting you, at least in the trans universe. At one point, some guy hit me over the head with a beer bottle, didn't like the way I looked, and I wound up in the ER overnight, which was not good, with staples in my head because they didn't like me, didn't like whatever. So it's going to happen. I was hoping it didn't, but it also woke me up that I'm not immortal. However, lots of friends rushed to my side, and that was a good thing. So you're never without people who are supporters. And I also say to people, if you can do one thing, if you're not part of this community, and it's fine, just be an ally, but be an active ally. Not just, oh yeah, I support you, and then they don't do anything. Be a person who will literally stand up and say, hey, don't do that. Hey, I support you, and here's what I'm doing to support you. It makes a big difference, especially to all the members, all the letters of the LGBTQ community, because it is a community, and it's under siege, and we know that, as it's always been. It will get worse before it gets better, but we'll get there. As I mentioned with Generation Z, they're gonna bring us forward. Confidence, you hit it right on the head. Confidence.
Do you perhaps remember a turning point where you decided or you found that confidence within yourself?
Yeah, actually, I did, and it has to do with stories. I had a client in San Francisco that I used to go to quite frequently, and they were a very family-oriented company, so nobody really wanted to go out to dinner or whatever, which was fine. And so I searched every city I traveled to. Where's the trans bar? Where's the place where I can hear stories? Not pick people up. I had no interest in that because I want to hear your story. And I found this bar. It's no longer there, but it was called Divas in San Francisco. I still have probably 200 friends from there. And we're talking many years ago. And I would just talk to the girls and like, tell me your story. What's your frame? Why do you feel this way? And yes, I came to the realization one night in a hotel room there that all these stories that I've been listening to, they're my story. It's just a different framework. It's my same story, about internal, like your spirit, your soul, everything's driving you forward. You don't do this because you're some kind of nutcase. You do it because you're driven to do it, because your brain is telling you what to do. And that was the turning point. One night in a hotel, I was up at 4 a.m. I broke into a deep sweat, and I went into the bathroom and I looked at myself and I said, their story, my story, it's the story. So now you're a strategic planner. What are you going to do about it? So I did what any strategic planner would do. I did a timeline. And I said, okay, what do I need to do first? First of all, get rid of the mustache, because that really doesn't look very feminine. And so then it's okay. Most women have, not all, one of the signs of it, in my head, coming from that Dolly Parton Halloween thing I always did, was the idea that deflecting from a face to a body, right? Because the first thing is the body. You don't know who they are. And particularly men will look at like that first, right? And so they're not looking at your face. They're not even listening to your voice, but okay, check box, right? Okay. And again, you do what you feel is right. Some people don't want to do anything, and that's fine. So I did the checkbox. Then I'm like, my voice was too deep. It still is a little on the deeper side, but I'm old. So there was a college nearby, Mercy Now University. They have a speech and hearing department, and they offered a course for trans people to understand voice and how to modify it. Can't totally change it, but you can modify it. And of course, I made friends with all the professors. A lot of them are still there. And every once in a while, I substitute for their classes too, which is sweet. But the idea was, okay, what can I do with this voice to project a image more aligned with who I am? And so I spent 2 years part-time, like going to different classes and understanding the how you can change, you can modify, and they have very sensitive equipment. So the first day I was there, they did this analysis of your voice. And then 2 years later, finally I said, okay, I think we're done as much as I can do. And the numbers were absolutely incredible, totally changed. I went from, I don't know, Bronson and Death Wish to this softer, but now ancient voice. So you can do certain things to get more confidence in whichever way you need to go. But those are the things you seek out. It's okay, how can I check this box off? You do this timeline thing. And I finally got to the point, okay, I'm telling everybody in my personal life, now it's the business life. Now I have to do that part. And I was very concerned because my biggest client was in North Carolina, at the time, the home of the bathroom bills. Not that everyone else doesn't have one now, but the idea that I didn't know how they would react. It turns out the reaction was amazingly great. They even threw me a party, which was sweet. And the people in the airport that I was there every week, they're like, hey, you're looking good. So the idea that you think you're going to have a problem, in many cases, you don't. The last piece is I waited so long to tell my mother, because my mother, I didn't know how she'd react. So I told her when she was 90 and I was 60. And it was one of those situations where we were at a wedding, my nephew's wedding, and everyone knew except she. And I didn't have any male clothes left because I only kept one suit for giggles in the closet, which of course didn't fit. And I said, so I took 3 little black dresses and heels and whatever. And I said, I got to tell her because I can't not do this. I have to do it. So I went into her room and we were going to have lunch. And I said, so how do I look, Ma? And she said, you look great, but you got to cut your hair because you look like a girl. And I'm like, hold that thought. So then I went through this explanation and she's like listening and she goes, okay. I'm like, what do you mean, okay? I thought you'd have a heart attack. She goes, no, don't you understand? Are you happy? I'm like, yeah. So she said, you have to understand, the goal of a parent is to make sure their child is happy. Don't matter how old you are. So you're happy? I'm happy. Now I'm hungry. Let's go to lunch. And that was the whole conversation. Except the one thing she brought up at lunch, she goes, I named you a male name. And she goes, that doesn't work for me. What do you want me to call you? Hence, I said, Angelique, because of angels. And I believe in them. And I put them to a lot of work over the years. The lesson learned from that was the people you fear the most sometimes turn out to be your greatest allies. Because you're predetermining what you think they're going to react, but they don't react that way. And then sometimes your best friends turn out to be not. So life is a strange thing.
I have worked with a handful of clients who are in their gender identity kind of exploration. Some of them are younger and they're able to pinpoint, as you said, you wrote out a timeline of, okay, I'm feeling this confidence, I'm feeling this need to take action and really become my authentic self fully. And I see the point 1, 2, 3, all the way through. And they've been able to plan this all out, but are unable to even take the first step because they're paralyzed by this fear that they're going to be attacked because they see so much violence on the news and on social media. And that is a reality. And I'm wondering, you're saying here that sometimes the people that you're most afraid of are actually going to have a really wonderful supportive response and sometimes not. But I'm curious if you have anything to add to those people that are just paralyzed in that space of fear and unable to take that first step.
Baby steps. Baby steps. You don't dive in the water when it's just unfroze. This literally took me years to slowly move forward. It took me 2 years to find a plastic surgeon to do these, just because I wanted the right person and I wanted to make sure, because plastic surgery is an art, and you have to be in it. And I found the most incredible plastic surgeon, and I did him 3 times. Bigger, biggest. And then he retired. I don't know if it had to do with me, but but again, it's increments. With me, I had nobody to follow. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew these were the steps I wanted to do. It's slowly. If you take the little baby steps to the point you're ready, and then don't do it in a big splashy way, just increments. Find a safe space like I did in San Francisco. No one knew me, so I wasn't worried about that. And you're in a neighborhood where so eclectic, it didn't matter. And so those are the kind of things that you can try to make the space as safe as possible. And then if you have a problem, you run into a store and you call for assistance, you call the police or whatever. I have to say, even when I was assaulted that night, the bar owner knew me, and so did the bouncers in a good way. And they did get the guy ultimately. Nothing really much happened. But the point was the 2 policemen didn't know me. And they asked me, "How are you okay?" Blah, 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 usual stuff. And we're going to call an ambulance, which hospital? Yeah, okay, fine. And can we just see your ID so we can make a record of it? And then they saw my ID. And the first thing they said was, "How may we address you?" Because the ID certainly didn't match this. And I didn't look anywhere near where I look today. And talk about respect. And so, yeah, Yonkers Police Department was ahead of their time. They still are. But still, the point is that you just do baby steps. And then confidence takes time. It really does. And you'll make a few mistakes too. Pull back. Try something else. Look at everyone else's stories. And there's lots of them out there. If my story doesn't work for you, there's probably 100, 200, 1,000 more that could be. And it doesn't have to be for this. It could be people who've overcome a handicap, people who have done something that they have succeeded in, and maybe it's not necessarily gender. Things you can do to change things. It is a process, and the process isn't always the same, but the end goal is the same. Be yourself, and you'll be much happier. That's the whole point, and I'm happy, which is reason why I don't think I look my age. And then share your story, because someone else may be looking to figure out where to go, how to go next. As you say, your clients are not sure, they're uncomfortable, they're scared. That first big plunge, don't take a plunge, take a little splash, and itty bitty on itty bitty, and you get there.
Yeah, that's such good advice, because even small action steps towards this ultimate goal, it's taking action for yourself on a consistent basis. It's not keeping everything stuck and stagnant.
Yeah, the idea that you're moving forward, you're learning as you go, and you need to test and learn. Try something. Doesn't work, try something else. And eventually, you're still moving forward. Maybe a step backward here and there, but you're still moving forward. And so that's my advice. Slow, steady, slow. Take a break, breathe if you're uncomfortable. I've seen some people detransition, which I can't even imagine that, but because of fear. And fear, it's like, either I'm going to get killed or I better just revert back to what I was, but I'll be totally unhappy and miserable. That's not the way to do it. Move, go somewhere else, change your environment, change wherever you live, how you live. And I'll always say too, like, the workplace can be a lifesaver. The companies who are accepting of talented employees who might be different may offer the one safe space that a person might have. So if your company's not supporting, find another one. There's always something you can do, as opposed to, yes, I've had some friends take their lives because the world hated them. They could not deal with it. And they were not like me, where I would give them the finger. People are fragile, some people. And I understand, because sometimes you can't climb out of that box. And you don't see a recourse. And that's another reason why I like to tell my own story. It's like, there's always a way to move forward. just don't fall into that trap that you're worthless, because every human is incredibly useful in this world and has a purpose.
Absolutely. The world is so much better off the more people that are living their authentic lives in whatever way they
Yeah,
can.
I think about humanity as one giant puzzle with billions, a billion, 8 billion little puzzle pieces. So the minute one drops out, there's a hole, and that hole can't be really replaced, especially if it's dropping out for cause as opposed to naturally. Every life is important and every life is valuable, and you're here for a reason.
Yeah. I find it really interesting that you point at work as being a lifeline potentially as well. I think a unique part of your story is that you transitioned in this high level leadership position within a company. And it sounds like by and large, you had a lot of support within your company and positive interactions throughout that process. But I'm curious if you can talk a little bit more about that and if there were any challenges or stumbling blocks you had to navigate and how you did that to find that job that felt like a safe place.
Here's the thing. The company had different business resource groups, one focused on LGBTQ, women's group, Asian group, etc. Again, I was looking to see how I could move forward. And at one point, the LGBTQ group had a void. There was no leader. Both of them had left and went to other companies. So there was zero. And I had been friends with the senior diversity and inclusion vice president for a while. And I called or I emailed, I forget, and I said, I'd like to be considered to take over the group. And she wrote back to me, she goes, what? Wait, what? So she took me to lunch and I was talking about it, talked about who I was. And I said, you see this shirt that's got a couple of lumps in it? And so I took over and I rode that position to 4 or 5 years, and we did a lot of great stuff. I even did the first trans panel they ever did with friends, young and older. And I didn't realize my 2 younger friends had never told their stories. And they were in tears. People in the audience, it was a live audience of, I don't know, 60, 70 people, maybe more. And there was not a dry eye anywhere. And yes, I had stumbling blocks too. Not many, but not enough to stop me. Because once I took over that group, I was at corporate. This is not just one company. This is a corporate thing. And then I finally okay, now I have the backing of the corporation, and that empowered me to move forward. You look for these little diamonds and what can I grab onto to make this work? And that helped me in the whole transitional thing too. Even my own company, I was senior. I had a fairly big group of people that were focused on different accounts. And I was the account management lead. And we used to have these Monday morning status meetings. So there'd be like 25 people in the room and we're going through it. And then I said, I want to tell you something about me. Again, I'm going to be doing this and blah, blah, blah. And I got a round of applause, which was sweet. And then I said, if anyone has an issue, talk to your manager, which was me. So, little fun things. But a couple weeks later, my creative partner came into me and probably had the greatest wisdom I've ever encountered. And he said to me, you've been dealing with this transition thought for years, for decades, but it's all new to us. And the team they just don't quite understand. They don't know. They're trying to figure it out. So understand that we're transitioning with you, which was a powerful thought because most people, they only think of themselves, which I was. Like, I'm transitioning, so what? So is everyone around me. And once you come to that realization, it's wow, yes, of course. Breathe, give them breathing room. If they have questions, ask the questions. And so those are the things that are really insightful sometimes. But yeah, it was not an easy thing. And some of the times when I give my talks to different companies, usually they call on the supplier that uses me. And usually what it is, they have someone transitioning and they've never experienced it, or they want to make sure it's done properly. So they'll get me to talk about the subject. That then creates the environment to make it easier for that person. And I usually wind up later on being contacted by the person because it helped. You go through that litany, and then it really does change the perspective moving forward. Home life may be toxic. Anything outside the office might be toxic. But when you're in the office, if you're respected and your coworkers respect and embrace you, it's great. You don't have to think about it too much. And hiding isn't a good option because you're thinking about that all the time. Once it's done, it's like the rock is off your back.
Yeah, it's freeing. Thank you for sharing that. That's so powerful to hear your experience, and also the ways that you've now given back and helped other companies to do better in this space, because it's hard enough for women to climb the corporate ladder and be in these positions, let alone trans women going through this experience who need that much more understanding and support. I'm really inspired by how much you've persevered through the stumbling blocks, as well as being able to use your confidence and the backing that you have been able to amass to support others in this community.
I was curious, just based on what you said, what do you think some of the biggest misconceptions are about the trans feminine experience specifically?
I'll talk trans in general because, see, I tend to be like, I'm a woman, period. The brain tells me who I am. Forget about what the body says. The brain tells me. I don't need an adjective. I don't need a modifier. I'm just a woman who is out there trying to be myself. The misconceptions are lots of stuff like, oh, it's just an act. Oh, it's just a phase. Oh, they're grooming people and all that crap. Listen, I don't groom nobody. What I really would encourage some of these political folks who seem to have that thing, who probably never met one of us, talk to us, because you're going to learn something that may change your life. And I've noticed that sometimes someone in their family comes out and all of a sudden there's an understanding. But in lieu of that, talk to one of us. We're out there. I have no problem talking to somebody and trying to convey what it's like and how you feel. There are people who are members of the clergy who keep saying it's only male, only female, marriage is this, marriage between man and woman. Great. But there can be love. Love is the common denominator of all religions and all traditions. If there's no love, it's not any of those. It's not a religion. It's simply not. Overarching all is just love. Love yourself. Love everyone around you. If you can't love them, then accept them. Simple. It's really simple stuff. Just talk to the people. Because these people who like, oh, you're mentally ill and you're this and that. No, we're not mentally ill. We know who we are, probably more than you do. And just because if you want to deflect on the issues of the time to throw a marginalized group under the bus, whether it's trans people or whoever else, or immigrants, give me a break. That's deflecting from reality and deflecting from some other bad thing that you're trying to do. So yeah, talk. We'll talk. Believe me, I have no problem talking to anybody. I have nothing to lose by doing it, because if I can even put a little shred of understanding or at least acceptance, it can make a big difference. I'm not going to change the world, but we can change one person at a time.
Thank you for your work and for all that you've shared with us today. Anything that you haven't already shared with us that you want to speak to, I want to give an opportunity for that. And hopefully you can leave us with some advice as therapists, as allies. What can we do to help and to put more good out into the world and to support this community?
I think pearls of wisdom at the end of the day, don't listen to the naysayers. Don't take it all to heart. I read so much of the crap that mental illness and all that garbage. No, it's not. Just because you can't understand it, which I understand, it's difficult to understand, but you can accept that people are different. So there's a difference between understanding and acceptance. And I do think that too many people are just hung up on this whole notion of biology and this and that. It's the same old story over and over again. But don't be disappointed. There's always going to be people in the world who are going to feel that somehow putting you down builds them up, which is ridiculous. And then look at history. Everyone has a different advocacy. Mine is just being out there and doing good. I don't do the sign holding and flag waving and all that stuff. Although I do like to walk in the Pride Parade. It's never too late to be the real you, as long as you're living and breathing. I've seen enough people in my family and other friends on the deathbed and dying and die in front of me, and I didn't want to be that person, never having lived who I was. So sometimes that helps in the thought process. What if you got hit by a bus tomorrow? A lot of what ifs, but if you never have lived, that would be a greater tragedy than not at least trying. So life is fragile. Life is short. And the older we get, now that I've hit the 7 digit, I realize that. And so it's even more important that we just focus sometimes, because when we're happy, we can make other people happy. It's hard not to. And then the last thing is the greatest gift you can give, I love this expression, is your time, because you'll never get it back. Lots of cliche type things, but it's the truth. And that's why I do things like this, because I feel that it's important that I'm giving time to use my words or thoughts, or I won't call it advice, I'll just call it best practice from me, I think can be beneficial to people. And again, listen to their stories, connect them with other stories, connect them with resources. I had none when I was 4. There was nothing, 0. No books, no mentors, no out people, no nothing. But the world's changed. And that's why I think lots of Gen Z and Gen X is understanding, or are understanding more about themselves, because there's information. It's all over the place. Some accurate, some not. You can distill what is clearly not. So
I think your story, I'm sure you've seen it already, has changed a lot of lives, and I think it'll continue to. I actually love what you said about time, because we can't get it back. So it is one of the greatest gifts. And it's part of why I named the practice Her Time Therapy, because I recognize how valuable, especially women's time, really is, with so much of the world trying to steal it away and take it for other things. So I want to thank you again for spending this time with us. And it was an absolute honor speaking with you today and getting to know you more.
likewise, thank you very much.
Thank you, Angelique.
If you're feeling empowered by today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. You can also follow us on social media at Her Time to Talk for more updates and tips. And if you'd like to support the show, consider becoming a patron. If you're ready to take the next step in your mental health journey, visit hertimetherapy.com and schedule a free consultation with one of our therapists. Thank you for taking the time to talk today. Remember, your story matters, your voice is powerful, and your mental health is worth prioritizing. Until next time, take care of yourself. This is your time. The information shared on this podcast is not intended to be personal mental health advice, and listening to this podcast does not create a therapeutic relationship between the listener and the therapist featured on this podcast. We encourage listeners to engage with a licensed therapist for personalized mental health treatment and advice.